NZ Aerosports, Icarus Canopies, now Gyro. That's right, we've rebranded, and Gyro is our next generation. It honours our founder, as that's the name we knew him by, but Gyro also marks the start of a new chapter. And not to be biased, but it's going to be fucking epic. Long story short, we're more us than ever, so if you're new to the sport, or even a Sky God Ninja Turtle, welcome. I think our valiant leader Lucy, Gyro's daughter, says it best.
And we still got that fuck yeah attitude. Rebrand! Woo!
Rebrand woo indeed, Lucy. Anyway, head over to gyro.com for more info and get amongst you legends.
I was 19, broke, unemployed, and sold my girlfriend's canopy for drug money. So I thought I better sew her a new one. What a sentence, and what a story. This describes the humble yet outrageous beginnings of NZ Aerosports, the home of Icarus Canopies, in the words of our founder himself. From getting a paratrooper toy from his mom, watching parachutes at the DZ as a 6-year-old, jumping off the wharf with a parachute made from bed sheets, doing his first jump at 16, sewing his first canopy on a borrowed machine at 19, and starting to sell parachutes out of a garage in 1986, Paul Gyro Martin had an undying love for the sky. Our company started with one man with the wildest of spirits and a true blue sky dream, a renegade. In the time that Gyro created and ran the Icarus Canopies brand until he passed away in 2017, he pushed everything he had to its limits. We miss him, and we always will. Gyro is the next generation of NZ Aerosports. It honors our founder, of course, because it was the name we all knew him by, but Gyro the rebrand also marks the start of a new chapter, our next jump. Gyro is the space between sound and silence, art and science, chaos and calm. Gyro is a state of epic tranquility that transcends understanding. That moment, in the door, in free fall, mid-swoop, where nothing but the present exists. A perfect balance of euphoria and thrill. Gyro captures our passion for flying and our commitment to designing break-the-fucking-rules canopies that deliver pilots pure, wild flight. Hey gang, so I got a new book out. It's called The Upside of Fear, and it's exactly what you think it's about. It's about the good side of, well, getting scared. In it, we talk not only about the science and biology behind fear, but the psychology as well. And it's not just coming from me, it's coming from some of the best in the sport. Omar Alhigelan, Jeff Provenzano, Maxine Tate, and so many more have contributed their sometimes terrifying stories to the book to help you overcome your fear. So head to the lunaticfringepodcast.com. You're going to find the link to the book there, as well as the other books. It's available in ebook, paperback, hardback, and audiobook right now.
Coming straight from the cockpit, it's another episode of Lunatic Fringe with the fucking pilot.
Ready, set, go! Back in the can for another episode of the Lunatic Fringe podcast with a very familiar face and an old friend. Tell me, who the fuck are you? What do you do?
Hey, Dean. Albert Berchtold here, the executive director for the United States Parachute Association, coming to you from Fredericksburg, Virginia.
I absolutely love that I get to ask the big boss who the fuck he is.
And I can say the whole sentence now without stumbling anymore.
Yeah, you've been in that seat for a while now, right?
Yeah, coming on 4 years. So
holy shit, has it been that long?
Yeah, time flies.
It literally seems like yesterday you and I sat down and were talking about, oh man, this new big position, and I knew him when.
Yeah, time flies. Time flies. There's so much stuff going on and so many different things happening. It's amazing how quick time goes by, right?
Yeah, but I mean, it's entertaining too, because I mean, I suppose these days we're elder statesmen, right?
Every once in a while you get a glimpse of that, I guess, right?
Yeah, but luckily, I mean, we're lucky in that we came up in a sport where there are great photos and videos from back in the day, but not so many that we have to be scared of them.
Not as many as there are today. Today you can't walk outside without there being 5 or 6 videos of you doing whatever you're doing.
Oh, dude, I personally could not have had the career that I've had if there was the prevalence of video and proof.
Yeah.
Oh, I just couldn't have had it.
Yeah, I think social media has definitely changed the way people interact and the way people perceive things and perceive people and
Sure.
yeah.
I think though for as negative as it can be, I think it's been an incredible positive, especially for the sport, right? I mean, even the sometimes goofy clickbait videos like Friday Freakout are opportunities for people to really learn from this social media machine that we have.
Yeah. Yeah, it certainly goes both ways, right? There's good and bad with everything, right?
Yeah, for sure. Although
Embrace the good, push away the bad, as always.
I came across a video that I'm sure you've seen more than a few times that floats around of Mr. Stanley doing that AFF when the jet flew under him.
Yeah, that's an old one, huh?
It's those old classics that I love seeing
Yeah,
come back because they're still so shocking.
yeah. That one still floats around. I haven't seen it in a couple of years, but
Yeah.
yeah.
So hey, to do as I usually do, let's give people a quick introduction to your start in the sport and kind of how you ended up in the big chair now, and then we'll talk specifically about the event that you and I are here to talk about today.
Yeah, so I started jumping in 1999. Did AFF out in Ohio shortly after I got out of college, and just kind of moved through the sport, doing various things. Worked at a gear store in Cross Keys, New Jersey. That's where we first met.
Yep.
Ended up down in Florida. Worked at PD for 14 years, performance designs, doing various things in marketing and all over the company. And then spent some time on the USPA board. And about 4 years ago, moved up here to Fredericksburg, Virginia. And now I'm the chief, what do they say, toilet washer and bottle cleaner here at USPA, right?
Now, your lead in to taking that seat was a lot of the stuff that you've done, obviously, beforehand, like the FLCPA. That was your baby, right?
Yeah, I ran that for 12 years while I was in Florida.
I mean, that was kind of the blueprint for the modern canopy associations around the world now, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's still the biggest one. Kurt and Jeannie took it over after I was looking at heading up here to Virginia, and I kind of courted them into it over the course of a few years, and they've done a great job with it. They did a rebranding of it to call it the U.S. Canopy Piloting Association rather than Florida. We just called the whole United States Florida. They rebranded it and actually called it U.S.
Right.
Which is really cool because that's definitely where it has been going, and as it grows, it's cool to see that change. And I don't think there's anybody anywhere in the world that's mimicked what that does, and that community really is, I think, one of the main reasons that we have such a strong canopy piloting presence at an international level in the United States, because we have a grassroots program that takes people from literally, now they're doing sport accuracy at those events.
Wow.
I didn't do that. Kurt and Jeannie started that. They created a new class this year where they're doing sport accuracy events. So they're getting people in with a couple, 50 jumps, 100 jumps, and they want to do sport accuracy. They can come do sport accuracy at these meets. And they're developing CP canopy piloting skills from the ground up. And that's building people into then becoming world-class pilots. So
not to mention, it's also building into people the safety culture that was lacking when you and I were coming up, right? Because now you're getting a guy with 50 jumps that might otherwise be kind of just having to figure it out on his own, is now learning from some of the best with a specific goal in mind. And even if he doesn't realize he's learning incredibly safe habits, he is while he's trying to achieve this goal. It's a really cool thing.
Yeah, when you can, that we can talk about this for days too, right? Well, I mean, we did when I was at PD, we did an event called Project Orange, and we did a CP. We started doing sport accuracy there. We did it on reserves, and then we did another event that was all sport accuracy. And we did it. We did this thing where we had satellite events all over the US. And then we held a championship in DeLand. And it was about most people didn't realize what that event was all about, but it was about making flying your canopy safe and accurate, making that cool. Not swooping, making the guy who could land and do just standard sport accuracy, making him the champion or her the champion. And the first year we did it, it was a female that won, right? And she went on to become an AFF instructor and a mentor in the sport, and really continued to grow. So yeah, it's about making flying safely and accurately, making that cool, you know.
Sure.
You know, when we started out, it was the guy who could kick the tree going next to the hangar and not, you know, get as close as you could to the hangar and the spectators without hitting them. And we've learned, obviously, since then that that's not necessarily the best way to develop canopy piloting skills, because eventually you're going to hit the hangar.
Yeah.
Or the ground or the tree or something else, right? If you play that game, eventually you roll the dice enough, you're going to lose. And we watched many people lose over the years, unfortunately. But you know, trying to develop those and making safe piloting,
sure,
the thing that becomes the champion effort has really been the focus of that, and continues to be.
And it's come such an incredibly long way since, what was it? It was Tuesday or Thursday morning swoop club that we did in Cross Keys.
Yeah, it was Tuesday
morning swoop club, and that was before any of it, right? I mean, I don't ever recall. I remember thinking this is the first place that's doing this.
There was a lot of staff that did it, and we couldn't do it on Monday because Sunday night was when everybody went out into Philly, and everybody was hungover on Monday morning, so you couldn't do it on Monday. But Tuesday you could, because by Tuesday everybody had licked their wounds and spent the day laying in bed and worked a little bit, maybe if there were some tandems and some work jumps to do, but it was a relatively quiet day. But then Tuesday, everybody's fired up and they're happy to get up at 5:30 in the morning and go swoop the pond.
Well, and I remember by the second year that Swoop Club was going on, it turned into an event. It was like kind of the after party, because you would have a crowd of people that had no intentions of jumping come out with a day off and lay the blankets out and be, you know, drunk by 10 a.m. watching everybody run the pond.
Yeah. Barbecue. They had a barbecue grill out there. I remember there were people making breakfast sandwiches. Yep. Next to the pond on the grill.
Yep.
Watching everybody swoop the pond and hang out. And
well, that was the thing with Cross Keys. We all ended up with a very weird Cross Keys accent, and we all smelled like the pond.
Well, we spent a fair amount of time in it.
Yeah. Oh my God. And that, oh man, you knew you had to wash your rig out quick, or that rig would have that smell forever.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I got lucky when I was learning. Mark Cruzy, who ran the loft at the drop zone at the time, there was an old Vector 2 rig there, and it had this massive harness on it, right? So it didn't fit anyone, and he pulled it down and he's like, "Here you go, use this." And I put it on. I was like, because I'm a tall guy, right? I'm 6'2". I was like, "It fits." He goes, "Yeah, that's why it's been sitting on the shelf. It doesn't fit anybody, and it's old." And he goes, "You can use it. You get it wet. You bring it back up here. I need to repack it." I said, "Deal." You know, he said, "Don't jump it wet." You know, and it was like, it had some old reserve in it. He goes, "Yeah, and just by the way, if you do have to use it, you might want to land it in the pond." You know, it was an old reserve, and he's like, you know, it probably won't land as good as a more modern reserve. So he's like, if you do have to jump it, just put it in the pond. Don't risk rolling an ankle or something with it. And I said, "Deal." Because at that point it'll just be funny to land in the pond anyway.
Of course.
But I used that thing for a few years while I learned, because I got wet a lot, right?
Sure.
And he had little did I know that he probably made more money than if he had sold me the rig, because every time I brought it up there, I had to pay him to repack it. He was packing it every week.
He must have been grinning ear to ear.
He just thought, yeah. I thought I got a good deal, and he just got a customer. He just got a customer that's going to pay for a repack every single Wednesday.
Oh man. It's funny to look back and to realize that that's kind of where it all started. I mean, that fired off in so many different directions and has led to
Yeah.
so much amazing stuff, all from waking up at 5:30 in the morning to go swoop that nasty Cross Keys pond.
Yeah, yeah, we used to do it, and I remember it would be like you had to sign up the day before, and I walked around like collect cash from everybody,
I
and they
remember.
give me money, and they go, "Well, I'll pay you in the morning." I go, "No, no, no, you pay me now." And then there would always be somebody, right? Because I'm like, I'm taking the money now, and that plane's gonna fly whether you're on it or not. You bought a seat on the plane, and I get up, and then there would always be somebody who would show up late, and first load would go, be like, "Whoo, sweet, check this out. There's only three of us on here because Joe slept in or didn't show
Right.
up." We're like, no big deal. He's paying for the seat anyway.
Yep, yep. Well, and John absolutely loved it as well because it kept a plane that otherwise would have just been sitting on the ground in the air every Tuesday. I mean, that thing flew for
Yeah,
hours.
yeah. He used to. He'd tell me he'd roll over in his bed at 6 o'clock in the morning and he'd hear the 206 flying, and he's there snuggled up with his kids in bed on a weekday morning, and he knows he's making some money, and then he'd show up later in the morning, and I'd hand him money for it, and he'd go, "Sweet, you paid for the 206 this month."
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
genius, really.
yeah,
So
yeah. Yeah,
now we can talk that kind of stuff literally for days, but we're gonna
yeah.
step it forward a little bit because
Sure.
I live in the past a little too much these days. Um, so you've been 4 years in the seat. We went from, my generation, the USPA was kind of a necessary evil. You had to have the licenses, you had to have the ratings, and maybe it did some good for you, and maybe it didn't. And you got the parachutist because you looked at the centerfold and the incident reports. But now you're sitting in the seat, and I pay a lot more attention now, oddly enough, when I don't jump that much, to what USPA does for jumpers. What do you see now that you've been there for 4 years that maybe you didn't before you were working with them?
It's a lot of stuff. I mean, I had a pretty reasonable idea, being on the board prior to working here. So it was a good transition in, but I mean, we've tried to make a focus on communication as well with the organization. The organization's always done a lot, right? A lot with a little. And it reaches so many parts of skydiving, and I can comfortably say the more I learn about what USP has done over the years, the more it just solidifies that we wouldn't be here jumping out of planes the way we are if years and years ago the skydiving community hadn't gotten together and organized to create this organization that is us, right? It's the
Sure.
42,000 people in the US and many abroad who believe in skydiving and want USPA to do what it does, fight for airport access, build the licensing and credentialing programs we have, the educational programs we have, um, do the stuff we do in competition, development of competition, records programs, things like that. It wouldn't exist if everybody in our community didn't want it to.
Sure.
And the more and more I try and remind people that USPA isn't some big bad organization. It's us, right? It's all of us, and we make the decisions, right? We elect the board, we decide what the organization does and doesn't do. This is the organization. When we go to talk to senators and representatives on legislative efforts, and we go talk to the FAA on a regular basis to communicate on skydiving related issues. It's not some weird person sitting in an office. Like, when I'm having those discussions, I'm speaking on behalf of 42,000 people. So it's not my opinion. It's skydiving's opinion, and it's skydiving's thoughts. So it's the skydivers. USPA is the skydivers' voice
Mm.
on those legislative efforts and airport access related issues, and we're here to help make sure that we have a voice, and we continue to maintain our spot in the aviation community.
Sure. Now, speaking of, I know that recently there's been stuff going around about battles between legislation that could affect skydiving. Can you talk a bit more about that?
Yeah. So I mean, we could go on for a half hour on this one.
Sure.
But yeah, the FAA reauthorization. There's a whole backstory of where it all started. Ultimately, FAA reauthorization has some language in it related to skydiving rules. It creates an aviation rulemaking committee, which will be headed up by the FAA, which will look at a couple of specific topics, one related to aircraft maintenance, another related to pilot initial and recurrent training. And that rulemaking committee will evaluate some things. They're going to look at data. They're going to look at specifically at USPA's data, and that rulemaking committee, which will work to have a strong voice on, will make recommendations back to Congress on what changes may need to be implemented or not.
I mean, obviously there's infinite directions you can take a conversation like that. Obviously for stuff like the pilot side of things, that touches close to my heart. And I know some operations that do an incredible job with training and recurrency with their pilots. And I know some that have no idea what those words mean. So I'd imagine that on its own is quite the topic to have to try and tackle, especially through an organization like the FAA, who I'm sure if given the opportunity would just have us not, you know.
Well, they're not too bad, honestly, with related to this language in FAA reauthorization, we actually agree pretty heavily with the FAA's opinion on it. They support the data and see it very similarly in the way that we do, and that's that aircraft accidents and aircraft fatalities have reduced over the last 20, 30 years. They've continued to reduce. And that's good. And that's been largely due to the effort of the community, right?
Sure.
And the efforts that we have all made collectively. It's USPA expressing what the outcomes of those changes that we've embraced as a community. It's USPA conveying all that back to FAA and back to Congress and in reports and statistics and things like that on behalf of the community. But it's the community that's making those changes. Sure. And it's the community that's causing that success, right? Now, if the community starts to fail in that respect, well, guess what? Things are going to go the other direction, right? There will be, if we do a bad job of self-governing ourselves and making our sport safer and making our aeronautic activity safer, then someone else will come in and step in and do that for us.
Sure.
So we need to constantly be improving on what we do. And if we do that as ourselves, then someone else won't have to come in and do it for us, which is what we don't want. So the original effort and some of the original language basically mandated changes on our sport. It would have mandated some additional maintenance requirements. It would have mandated additional pilot training and recurrency and testing and things like that nature. And we pushed back pretty hard against it. We produced data which shows that what they were proposing would not have made the sport safer. It would not have changed the outcome of any past accidents that had occurred or fatalities. We showed that it would have created much higher costs on operators, which eventually flows down into our jump prices and all that fun stuff. So we had enough people who heard that argument and that logic and found it to be sound, to where it shifted direction to what it is now, which is a committee headed by the FAA, which we hope will, they have to, because based on what's in the reauthorization bill, it requires them to look at the data compiled by the United States Parachute Association. So that will all get looked at and vetted heavily. And then our hope is to help ensure that wise decisions are made there that are in the best interest of the community and safety. Because truthfully, there's nobody who has more at stake to make sure the sport is safer than we do, because it's our lives. We're the ones in the planes, right? So we're not crazy. We're not suicidal. And, with all due respect, there's no one sitting on Capitol Hill who has more to lose if this sport isn't done safely than us, right? Myself, right? I got a wife and 2 kids. I don't want to do something that's going to endanger my life, right? Within reason, within proper risk mitigation steps, right? And I think that can be done in an allowable amount as long as we do the things we're supposed to do and take the steps we're supposed to take as a community.
Which is honestly spectacular to hear, especially when you say that in dealing with a governmental agency, they listen to logic and reason. That's amazing. It really is, because you wouldn't naturally expect that someone on Capitol Hill who knows next to nothing about our sport would agree with again a bunch of people that just throw themselves out of airplanes. So it's fantastic that it's been greeted with that kind of mentality, and that they're allowing it to move forward in a reasonable way instead of just going, nope, this is how it is, this is how it's going to be.
Well, it's a, would I say it was all welcomed with open arms, or would I say we had to knock on a few doors or maybe beat some down? Certainly it didn't go the way it went without us doing what we did.
Sure.
And that involved our skydiving community and reaching out and asking them to write letters and engage with their legislators and tell them that this piece of legislation will harm them, harm their businesses, harm them as individuals. And those are the voters, right? And that's our job to help move those USPA members to make those phone calls and send those emails, because that's our job, right? To help them make sure they have a voice, their voice is heard.
It's a great thing for the skydiving community at large to understand that these are the types of things that the USPA is taking on, because the average jumper either didn't hear or never really paid much attention to an issue like that could have dramatically affected the sport that they love so much. So it's nice for the word to get out that this is what your membership is paying for. Like, we're keeping this sport going. Now, another great part about the community is recently I've seen the outcry and the help going towards Paris Valley for the issue that they were having with the buildings going up that would have devastated the operation and the fight that goes on there. I mean, that's the community coming together to try and, save one of the gems in the sport. And it's amazing to see.
Yeah. And that's another one where, data-driven decisions need to be made in with safety in mind and things of that nature. And everything we do. And one of the reasons that I think we are successful in many ways in having our voice heard is because we do our best to present logic and reason and make data-driven decisions on behalf of our community and our point of view. So, and when we do that and it's logical, it's, it very comfortably rebuts decisions that are made on whims that are not based on fact or data.
Sure.
We have to do things the right way. And as long as, like I said, as long as the data is in our favor, then it makes sense, right? And we all have a hand in that, right? We all have a hand in that by doing things the right way, by doing gear checks, by acting with a good safety culture on your drop zone. And when you see things that are wrong, say something. Don't let stuff slide by. Don't be complacent. All those things play into it, and it all makes a difference. And if we all move in that direction, then USPA on behalf of our members can make these arguments.
Sure.
If we don't take care of it ourselves, then it's a lot harder to make the arguments.
Without a doubt, man. And I mean, obviously the community is the big part of trying to come together to do all that. Now, speaking of that, the reason that we're sitting here talking today is there's going to be an event coming up this summer directly tied into our sport and its community. So why don't you talk about that?
Yeah, so it's called World Skydiving Day. It's going to be held on, this year it'll be July 13th. It's the second Saturday in July. So the idea is this will be an annual event. We'll have one again next year. And it originally started as a concept of a national skydiving day. And then at one point, I was having a conversation with Chuck Akers, who's our president, and he goes, "Hey, whatever happened to that national skydiving day idea you guys were going to work on?" It was like 6 months after we had spoken about it. I said, "Well, I got bad news, Chuck. We're not doing it." He goes, "Why not? It seemed like a really good idea. Like, why wouldn't you guys do it? Why wouldn't you want to do it? Like, why, And you could tell I hooked him a little bit. And I go, "Well, that's because we're not doing a national skydiving day. We're going to do a world skydiving day instead." And he goes, "Oh, yeah." So we contacted a few other associations around the world. We got in touch with British Skydiving, Australian Parachute Federation, and CSPA up in Canada, and started talking to them about it. And they were pretty jazzed on it too. They're like, "Wow, it sounds really like a really good idea." And it's about creating one day when together, I mean, we are a worldly community, right? Everybody around the world loves skydiving. Let's make one day where we can all celebrate skydiving and come together as a worldwide community and post videos about the sport and do special jumps and do flag jumps and celebrate skydiving within our respective countries, but show it on an international scale. So we got to talking with the PR firm that we work with at USPA, and we threw the idea at them, and the light bulbs started going off there. They go, because in media, it's about, in PR, it's about finding things that will attract attention, right? Things that the news will be interested in. And unfortunately, in skydiving, a lot of the time, that's a fatality.
Sure.
It doesn't happen all that often, but when it happens, that's something they cling on to. So anything we can do to find other stories that show how awesome skydiving is that aren't revolving around death and despair, that's better, right?
Yeah.
So that's a big goal of USPA and our PR efforts. So we threw this idea at them, and they went, "Wow, that's really cool." So then we said, "Well, hey, why don't we create a record as well?" So the World Skydiving Day record is for the most jumps on World Skydiving Day.
Nice.
So we've developed a system with the other associations around the world and other drop zones in the United States and around the world, and a reporting process, which you can find on worldskydivingday.com, where associations can report the jump numbers in their country. Drop zones can report the number of jumps at their drop zone, or individuals can report the number of jumps that they made that day.
Nice.
And we have a system in place to make sure jumps aren't counted twice and all that fun stuff. But it'll be reporting it at all levels to come up with how many jumps were done on that day around the world.
That's pretty cool.
So, and the more people that get involved, the bigger that number will be.
Absolutely.
So our hope is that, and I'll be honest, I don't know what the number is going to be, right? Is it going to be 5,000, 10,000, 50,000? I don't know, right? It's all about how many people in our community decide to participate and report, because we don't have an international reporting system that gives us that data. So it really revolves around everybody getting involved and getting as many people as we can involved, and reporting those numbers. Yeah.
And the more and more you look at skydiving as a whole, as a worldwide community, the more and more you see the community continually branching out. Like you were at the European Symposium this year, yeah?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which just keeps growing every year. I was talking to Marta, who it was giving me the numbers for the very first one all the way up until now, and it's just ballooned into this amazing event here in Europe.
Yeah.
And of course, the symposium in the United States has just gotten bigger and bigger. I mean, it's getting really, really impressive, and it's great. It's gaining traction all around the world now. So I would imagine that because of the close ties that people like you have with people in the European Symposium, it just ties in all together and makes an event like this, an international event, truly possible.
Yeah, and we've got, so for fun jumpers, it's great. We're seeing drop zones create events, record attempts, other record attempts other than the World Skydiving Day record. They're going to do, I think in Chicago, like they're doing a naked record on that day. And I think down in Texas, they're doing they're doing another, like there's different boogies, record attempts, camps and stuff that they're using that day as a way to kind of engage fun jumpers. And on the other side of things, drop zones are using it as a great marketing opportunity for tandems.
Yes.
Right. Not only can you come check off a tandem skydive off your bucket list, but on your first skydive, you can be a part of a world record.
Yeah.
Pretty good catch, right?
Absolutely.
Pretty good thing to get somebody off their couch and go make a skydive. The idea that, yeah, I made a jump and here, check this out. And they've got it on their wall. They got their first jump certificate. And right next to it, they've got their World Skydiving Day certificate that they were on a skydiving world record. Right.
Which is honestly a super cool idea because it just reinforces every bit of it and it makes it so much more cool,
Yeah.
not just for them as an individual, but for us as a community. And you're right, every time skydiving pops up in the news, or it used to be anyway, it used to be something negative. Now I notice a lot more positive spins on skydiving, especially with all the proper records that are being attempted and smashed everywhere. And then my funnest one was watching the video of the night jump that they did in, I believe it was Arizona, with the sparklers.
Yeah, the
And
Max Pyro.
and everybody thought it was fucking UFOs. I remember like half a dozen of my non-jumper friends sending me these TikTok videos of it's UFOs, they're
UFOs.
here. And I'm
Yeah,
like, no, that's actually some of my friends.
that's my friends.
Yeah. And what a cool way for that to put it out there. So to be able to now link it internationally with these big events and different both cool records and goofy records is just really fun.
Yeah, and we've done a lot of work with all those things you mentioned, record attempts and the SOS jumps that went on and the Max Pyro event was another one. There's a number of those things, including, and then World Skydiving Day will be next. Number of events that we've put a big push behind from USPA and our PR efforts with our in-house staff as well as our PR firm, helping spread the word on those things and helping get them into the hands of local and national news media to help promote the sport.
Sure. Now, so the event is July 13th, you said, second Saturday.
Yep, July 13th this year, second Saturday in July. So we'll establish that record this year and see what it is, and then next year the goal will be to try and break it, whatever that number comes in at. Right? If it's 10,972, well, next year we're going to shoot to beat it.
Yep. Now, you said earlier there's a website that people can go to to find out more about the event and maybe what's going on for them locally.
Yeah, if you go to worldskydivingday.com, we tried to make it easy. You can go on there. You can find drop zone locators for drop zones around the world. We made links through to various associations. There's information on there for first-time jumpers, for them to get information on how to get into skydiving or how to start skydiving. That's the effort to help bring people into the sport with this endeavor. There's some information for licensed jumpers on what they can do, how they can engage with World Skydiving Day, how to be a part of the record. And then there's the submission forms for how to log your jumps and how to order a record certificate.
Nice.
If you make a jump or jumps that day.
Very, very cool. Now, a random question. Where are we as the USPA in regard to like memberships and new jumpers? Like, are we trending up these days? Is it the same kind of turnover? Because I honestly have no idea anymore.
Yeah, we're just shy of 42,000. And we've kind of hovered around there for the last few years. COVID obviously threw wrenches and everything. Sure. I mean, the USPA has been on a slow incline on membership for the last 20 years, right? Very slow incline, stable and sustainable increase, which has been good. We did see a little dip during COVID, but luckily it came back rather quickly for us here in the US, which is great. And now we're still around that between 41, 42,000. And then seasonally it kind of has a few little humps in it.
Of course.
Obviously we see the biggest increase in the summer. Things tend to, we see a few drop off in the fall who don't renew. But yeah, slow increase. And we do see there is a reasonable level of turnover in the sport, right?
Sure.
People don't stay in the sport forever. There are the lifers like you and I.
Sure.
And then there are some who spend a year, 2 years in the sport and then drop off. So there's a certain churn of that as well.
Do you happen to know off the top of your head what's the demographic for the most people joining USPA these days? Because I see online, especially I moderate for the Beginner Skydiving Forum, and I see a lot of what would have been considered older jumpers getting started, guys and girls in their, late 40s and 50s that are just starting jumping.
Yeah, it's not surprisingly, it's not a bunch of crazy 18-year-olds.
Mm.
Um, um,
Do you think that's a partly a cost prohibitive factor for the younger people?
maybe hard to say specifically. Definitely, the older crowd. There is a good number in the older generation. Off the top of my head, I don't remember. We do have those statistics on age and some other information, but here I can take a peek at it right here, see if I've got it handy.
Yeah,
Um,
I did catch you in the control center, didn't I?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it always just seemed curious to me, and I know that I've had a number of discussions with a bunch of female skydivers that say women skydivers are definitely a small proportion, but it's been growing, and so that's nice to hear as well.
Yeah, it's in the neighborhood of about 14%. Um, not making a massive increase.
Mm,
It's been every in the 12 to 14. I think we're in about the 12, about the 14 right now. So
okay,
hard to say if that's growth or that's just movement.
sure.
If it starts hitting the 15, 16, then I would say that would be a clear indication of an increase in that percentage.
Sure. It's kind
Um,
of funny because I remember the first time that I was told that the percentage of women in the sport was that low. I was kind of shocked because I know so many badass female skydivers, but then it dawned on me a lot of the drop zones that I've worked and jumped at are the big places where there's just more people of every kind.
yeah, yeah, hard to say what drives it. I mean, there's been a lot of discussion on that as far as what keeps people in the sport. Are there ways we could make it more welcoming to different genders, different ethnicities, things of that nature? So
Sure,
there's always differences of opinion on that as far as what the appropriate answer is. But
sure,
from the USPA side, we try and make sure that everything we're
sure.
doing, we're trying to be cognizant of what we're doing and make sure the sport's welcoming, much as we have control over that.
Sure. Now, looking down the road, say over the next 3 to 5 years, where do you see us going as a community? Is there a goal in mind, or
Um, well, there's a lot of things. It's continual movement in efforts that support the mission of the organization,
Hmm,
right? Now in different areas that means different things. Um, I think continuing to improve and continuing to make the organization better, and continuing to adjust with the times, what the community dictates, what the aviation environment dictates,
hmm,
what people want from in our community, what they want to see, where they want changes. Um, I mean, one of the big things in the last uh, couple years that we've delved into is more online education,
hmm,
right? So it started 3 years ago, 4 years ago, with developing a online safety and training advisor video program. So, and we used it, I think, maybe even longer than that. But it was when you became an SNTA, you had to go log on to the USPA library and do a training bit, right?
hmm,
You had to learn a little bit. You had to go through this program. You had to answer a bunch of questions. And last year we started to really expand that, and we developed an online coach course, pre-course. So if you're going to go get a coach rating with a USPA examiner, typically with many examiners, it's a 3-day course. You spend 1 day sitting in a classroom and then you spend 2 days out there jumping. Well, what we, in USPA staff spending time with examiners, what they realized is that a lot of the classroom work that they spend a whole day sitting in a classroom doing, the book work, there's no reason we couldn't put that online,
hmm.
right? And go into a mixed learning platform. So we've taken a good chunk of that information. We've put it into a module-based training program. It's video and audio. You sit there, you watch a video, you listen, you look at the fancy animated pictures that go across the screen, and then you answer questions and you do a test. And when you're done the test, you get a grade. And then you can, when you finish that course, an instructor examiner or a coach examiner can check your results and see, they can log in as a coach examiner and see your results, see that you passed, see that you finished the course, and they can use that for your ground class if they want, right?
Nice.
So it's an option. It's not mandatory. Some coach examiners still use the old teach it by on a whiteboard if they want.
Sure.
Others have embraced this mixed learning opportunity where people can go, they do this coach course online. They take a month to go through all the modules, and then they show up to their coach course and the examiner checks it out and goes, sweet, you're good. So we launched that at the beginning of this year. We were beta testing it last year. We also put in place online rating renewal seminars. So you can go online, you can take an online course for, I think it takes about 3 hours to do. And when you're finished it checks off the rating renewal box on your instructor rating renewal.
Oh, that's awesome.
So instead of doing, some drop zones hold big rating renewal seminars. They start their year off with a briefing with all their instructors. They get all their instructors together and they do a day or a half day sitting there of meetings. Other places have a hard time doing that.
Sure.
And they don't do it. So that instructors find themselves having a hard time meeting that requirement. So we made a course. And now people can go online, they can do that. They'll be able to brush up on some skills. And then that'll sign them off for their rating renewal seminar.
Man, I'll tell you what I wouldn't have given to had that availability back when I was doing all that stuff. Holy shit.
Yeah.
I can't even count how many hours in slightly too warm classrooms you spent trying not to fall asleep and retain the information you needed.
Yeah. And then by the second half of it, people were drinking beers,
Yeah.
And now we're developing a similar to the coach course. We're developing an AFF and a tandem pre-course as well.
Oh, that's awesome.
So it's going to create an opportunity now for much more standardized learning for people who want to get into coaching and instructing. There's no question as to what did their instructor teach?
Sure.
Did they learn that emergency procedure or not? Did they learn that rule or not? If they did it in this class, it's in that bookwork. And Jen Sharp recently, who works with us at USPA, she recently got her PhD in education. She did her thesis on mixed learning, right? So we've got now a doctor working at USPA who did their thesis on how to develop mixed learning programs and how effective they can be.
For sure.
Yeah. And people dig it. And then we think as we move into the future, that's going to be a big chunk of what USPA is able to provide people is a more standardized learning process, right? We have manuals, we have all the books that everyone teaches from, but the more we can do to streamline all that and help get more instructors into the sport, make it easier to become an instructor and become a well-educated one.
Absolutely. Well, and with the standardized learning and having it consistent like that, you avoid the problem that you and I would have seen back in the day where you see the way an instructor is teaching things and you find out who taught them and you go, oh, that makes sense because that fucking guy taught him and this guy teaches something different or that guy doesn't do it right at all. So it's really nice to know that it is working towards this is how it is. There's no gray area that's black and white. You're going to learn these skills, learn these things, and be able to take them out to the wider world. That's really good.
Yeah, the standardization efforts with the examiner core have been going on and they've been more and more successful, I think, every year in creating a more standardized learning process with all the examiners out there.
Sure.
And moving some of the heavy lifting of that to the parts that can be moved into a mixed learning environment with online training tools seems to be the next step, next evolution in that. So
Sure. Well, and take my opinions with a grain of salt. It's been a very long time since I sat in a classroom to get a rating.
yeah. And we found, I mean, like Ron, who does, we've had some AFFIs who have asked their AFFI candidates to take this coach online training tool, and they're doing it, and they're looking at it and they finish it and they go, wow, this is great. I learned a lot from this. And those are people who already have a coach rating. They're
good.
now looking to get their AFF rating, and they're going, this is good stuff. So they're picking up things that maybe they didn't pick up, or maybe they forgot because they did their coach rating 5 years ago or something.
Sure.
Either way, it seems to be well received so far. It's still in its infancy, but it seems to be getting good responses back.
Well, but what an awesome direction and an awesome thing to be pushing for. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So now I'm not going to burn all your morning. I know you're a busy guy, but give me a recap on how people not only find out about the USPA and how to reach out to the USPA, but once again, the website for the World Skydiving Day event. Just give them all the contacts.
Sure. If you want to get information on USPA, go to USPA.org. If you want information on Parachutist Magazine, you go to parachutist.com. That's our publication. You can find back issues all the way back to the 1960s there. If you're ever bored and you need something to read, pick up one of the issues from the 60s. They are amazing to read. There is some awesome stuff in there. I haven't read them all. I wish I had, but there's great stuff in there. So if you're ever bored and you want to be entertained, experienced skydiver, go pick up one from the 60s or 70s and you'll get a good laugh. On USPA.org, you can find contact details for all the board of directors members, all the staff members here at USPA. So depending on what your inquiry is, and then there's also, if you don't know who to send your inquiry to, there's a general email, USPA@USPA.org. Send it to that one. Say, I don't know who this goes to, but here's my silly question. And then we will make sure it gets to the appropriate person, whether that be me or someone on staff or someone on the board, whichever way you want to do it. But we are very accessible and we're here for you. We are your organization. So please, if you have a question, don't be scared to reach out. We love talking to members all the time. In fact, we have an entire department of people who just spend their whole day talking to members. That's all they do. And they love it.
Nice.
World Skydiving Day, www.worldskydivingday.com. You don't have to say the www anymore, do you?
No, I don't think so. No. Not anymore. That's just for us.
That's for us old people. So for the old people, like Dean and I, it's www. For all the young people, you can just type in worldskydivingday.com. And that'll take you to all the information you need about that. And if you're at a drop zone and they don't know anything about it, and you go to your DZ and you say, hey, are you guys participating in World Skydiving Day? And your drop zone owner goes, what's World Skydiving Day? Just take him and shake him a little bit and say, how did you miss this? It's the biggest skydiving event in the world. It's happening, and we need to be a part of it.
And then you put him down in front of the computer and type in www.
Yeah, you type in www for him because he probably needs the www.
Yeah, indeed.
And show it to him, and maybe organize an event for your drop zone and get some stuff going. And make it an awesome day. Take some pictures of stuff going on. Send it in for the World Skydiving Day.com website and promotional efforts. And we're gonna look to make a lot of good stuff happen and make a lot of noise about how great the sport is here in the U.S. and around the world on that day. So,
man, Albert, my friend, I cannot thank you enough. Every time we get to catch up, it always sparks up all these amazing old memories. And it's fantastic not just to see where you are, but what you guys are aiming towards and what you're doing for the community. So again, I thank you so much for your time.
I appreciate it, Dean. It's good to see you too, man.
You take care
Talk
of yourself.
Again soon.
See ya. Well, there you have it. Another episode of the Lunatic Fringe podcast, brought to you as always by, well, wait, not as always, actually. Brought to you now by Gyro. Formerly known as NZ Aerosports, you'll head to gyro.com for their next level line of canopies. By Pussfoot, the extreme sports collective. Head over to pussfoot.com to check it out. By Summit Parachute Systems, check out summitparachutesystems.com to talk to Jarrett Martin and the gang about kick-ass pilot rigs, rigging courses, and more. By Flyaway Indoor Skydiving, go to flyawaytn.com and check out all the cutting-edge stuff to come. By Pure Spectrum CBD, head to purespectrumcbd.com to check out their wide range of CBD products. And as for us, head to the lunaticfringepodcast.com to listen to any of the hundreds of episodes currently available, hit the link for our YouTube channel, pick up your copy of the Lunatic Fringe book or The Accidental Stripper, and get a sneak peek at upcoming guests. Once again, thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
Damn.